Up until this week, Lori Pohutsky was a little-known representative in the Michigan State House, where she sponsored a raft of progressive legislation, including bills to protect the right to abortion, enable gender self-identification, and make June LGBTQ Pride Month. Then the 36-year-old stood up to speak at a rally on the steps of the state capitol, organized by the 50501 movement, a rapid response to challenge illegal actions from Donald Trump and his plutocrat allies. Dressed in a purple parka jacket and tortoiseshell glasses, the chairman of Michigan Women's Progressive Caucus announced that she had booked an irreversible medical procedure in the aftermath of the Republicans' election victory. Just under 2 weeks ago, I underwent surgery to ensure that I would never have to navigate a pregnancy in Donald Trump's America, she told a crowd of hundreds, some of whom held placards comparing the Republicans with Nazis. If you know people who are questioning how serious this is, I'm going to repeat myself. A sitting government official opted for voluntary sterilization because she was uncertain she would be able to access contraception in the future. A sprightly figure not afraid of sparring on social media, Ms. Pohutsky immediately found herself splashed across global headlines and facing a spiraling backlash that paints her as the embodiment of diversity-obsessed Democrats. Trump derangement syndrome. So many broken people, sighed the conservative commentator Ben Shapiro on X. In an interview with The Telegraph, Ms. Pohutsky said she had no regrets about the surgery, which involves 2 small punctures through the abdomen to tie up the fallopian tubes, and hoped her announcement would encourage others who were considering sterilization, either because of Donald Trump or otherwise. At the age of 36, and with a busy work schedule shared by her husband, the president of the Michigan branch of the American Civil Liberties Union, ACLU, Nathan Triplett, frankly, it started looking less and less likely that the couple would have a baby. I feared that I would not have access to contraception long term. They had been discussing whether or not they would try to have a child for years, and having decided against it, Ms. Pohutsky worried that the changeover in the White House meant she may be compelled to give birth against her wishes. I feared that I would not have access to contraception long term, she said. I had concerns that I would not be able to access pregnancy-related health care if I did become pregnant. Partly thanks to her work in the State House, Michigan enshrined the right to abortion shortly after the Supreme Court undid Roe v. Wade in the summer of 2022. Women in the state can easily terminate pregnancies as it stands, but a wave of executive actions by the Trump administration have led hospitals in the state start to change the procedures they offer. The facility that treated her, 2 days after Mr. Trump's inauguration on January 21st, preemptively stopped offering gender-affirming care, even though they are not required by law to do so. With the hardline wing of the Republican pro-life movement calling for a national abortion ban, Ms. Pohutsky feared Mr. Trump could obliterate the protections she and her colleagues delivered with Proposal 3, enshrining abortion rights in the state constitution, and a follow-up bill. None of those state laws will stand up to a national move, and none of them can plan for hospital systems that stop cooperating with state law, she said. So shortly after Mr. Trump won election in November, she and Mr. Triplett decided to book the surgery. On the day of the procedure, she had asked her husband if he could be available to drive her back to Lansing, the city where the state house is based, so she could be present to vote against 2 Republican bills that lowered the minimum wage and reduced the amount of sick pay small businesses must provide. You go to sleep, she said, and then you wake up, and things have changed pretty significantly. I certainly didn't think it was going to be this public. But perhaps the most life-changing aspect came after Ms. Pohutsky's appearance at the Lansing rally. Given the surgery only permanently closed off an option she had been unwilling to take anyway. The Daily Telegraph, BBC, New York Post, and Sun all carried news of her procedure in Britain, as outlets picked up the story around the world. I certainly didn't think it was going to be this public, she said. but I knew the crowd I was talking to, and I knew there were press there, and I hoped that hearing somebody involved in the government would validate the concern that a lot of people have had. While Republican colleagues of Ms. Pohutsky's in the Michigan legislature have posted snarky comments about her online, several women have reached out in the past 24 hours, sort of relieved to hear somebody else say what they had felt, and what had led them to make their decision around, a surgical option. I was hoping that if there were people who were concerned, or sort of on the fence, or, just hadn't heard anybody say, yes, I've been there too. This is okay for you to make this decision. Some of those women said they were now calling their doctors to book their own sterilization. So I guess in that regard, it did what I wanted it to do. But even for those who do decide to permanently render themselves infertile, finding an appointment may not be easy. One woman told her that she was unable to book a consultation, as so many people are trying, after Mr. Trump's victory. Formerly a microbiologist, Ms. Pohutsky ran for Michigan's Congress in 2016, viewing it as the best place to make a practical difference in terms of women's reproductive rights. The campaign is in part a personal one. In 2018, she gave a speech at Michigan State University that revealed she had been a victim of rape on the campus. Re-elected 3 times, Ms. Pohutsky has earned a reputation as a flinty advocate of progressive causes. An openly bisexual woman, she argued against laws that require teachers to inform parents if their child seeks to be recognized as transgender in class. Speaking as someone who never came out at home, as I knew it wasn't safe to do so. In 2023, she supported a bill that will allow citizens to change the gender on their birth certificates without the need for a doctor's letter to certify a sex reassignment surgery. Challenged by a colleague who queried whether anyone could really change their biological sex, she issued a curt reply. "It really doesn't matter for this conversation," she said, wearing a bold candy pink blazer. "We're talking about identity documents, not a philosophical conversation. I think that people have a lot of preconceived notions about what DEI means." In his election campaign, Mr. Trump made gleeful capital out of the Democrats' support for diversity initiatives and transgender whites, casting it as a sign they were out of touch. This week, he signed an executive action barring transgender women from competing in female sports. Parts of the Democratic caucus now believe the party should step away from the issue. Ms. Pohutsky does not agree. I don't think that anyone has ever been harmed by trying to create a more inclusive workplace or a more inclusive experience for people, she said. "I think that people have a lot of preconceived notions about what DEI means, but they aren't looking at it holistically and realizing what it's going to mean for their day-to-day life," she added, citing the temporary closure of a sexual assault investigation unit within Michigan's police force, which fell under the broad terms of one of Mr. Trump's anti-DEI executive orders. An increasingly lone voice of unabashed anti-Trump stridency, Ms. Pohutsky is unlikely to change course amid her party's soul-searching. In response to Mr. Shapiro, she wrote on X, "I think the broken people are the ones who are personally aggrieved by my personal healthcare decision. But then again, you thought WAP, the raunchy rap song by Cardi B, was a crime against humanity. So go off." And at home, she can rely on her husband, who was pained by the sight of legions of online commenters piling into her after her sterilization announcement. "I said, 'I'm sorry. I guess maybe I should have not said this.' He stopped me, and he said, 'No, you said exactly what you needed to say. I know why you said it.' Then, brackets,